Hey everybody, welcome to our final master study. I cannot believe that we are finally at the end of this course. But here we are, and we are studying A Sunday on La Grande Jatte by Seurat. And as you probably have noticed if you watched all of the lesson videos, I reference George Seurat a lot. You may have seen his pieces in a lot of my videos in this class, but man, there is so much to learn from him and his work that it is like impossible not to talk about when an artist, impossible not to talk about when we're talking about composition. And he referred to himself as a scientist, and it is absolutely true. So he was a pointillist artist, and not just a pointillism artist, but this piece in particular was pointillism. And what pointillism is, it's almost like pixels, where there are all these little dots on the canvas, and from far away it creates this image, but up close it really is like just a whole bunch of colors mixed together. And he was a scientist in the aspect that he was trying to play with color, where the viewer's eye would mix the colors together, as opposed to just mixing the color on your palette and then painting it onto the canvas the way you like perceived that color to be. And so it was like this optical, not an optical illusion, it was like this optical science that he developed about how to create like the perfect color, whether it's in shadow or highlight, and what that would look like in the certain range of like how much blue to red to yellow. And he would almost use all of the colors in every part and layer them, not only to create that color, but to create form, like make it look three-dimensional, and these very distinct shapes as well. Like there's so much involved in this that you can break it down forever, like for real. So why don't we actually just start with the basics of it, and that is the shapes of the composition. We have this long horizontal line in the background that helps us divide the ground beyond the lake. It kind of attaches the foreground to the background. We have a diagonal line that is receding into the background, so that diagonal line is giving us a sense of not only scale but perspective as well. So anything that is receding back along that diagonal line is getting smaller because the space is going back. Now, at this time, Impressionism was the top style of art, and Impressionism was not only mimicking like how light moves within a piece, but it was like the sense of being in a space where life was occurring, and capturing it in one little frame. So as you can see in below, I'm breaking down the very basic shapes of this piece. And so we're adding that diagonal line in, and we're kind of just blocking off where everything is going to go. He created this piece. It wasn't like an impressionist piece where he was sitting there plein air painting it. This piece is big. Let's see how big it is. It is 82 inches by 121 inches. So it's huge. And you may have already noticed, I don't know, maybe not, but all the paintings that I'm referring to in this class are from the Art Institute of Chicago. That was not by accident. That is because I am a student of Chicago, meaning I didn't like go to the Art Institute for college, although I've taken many art classes there. But my mom would take me to the Art Institute. She's an artist, and she would take me there as a child growing up to draw and to study, to do artist studies. We would go there and sketch on the weekends. So these paintings from the Art Institute are such a part of my life that I've sat in front of these pieces and analyzed them prior, like so many times prior to even like doing this course, that talking about it to a camera, well, talking about it to you is bizarre, because it's like retelling a story to somebody that you've told to like many people. You kind of forget the things that you've already mentioned because you've talked about it so many times, or you've thought about it so many times. So I'm going to do my best to kind of break everything down. But if you want to learn more about this piece, there is a really great YouTube video by Khan University that talks about the breakdown of this piece as well. And yeah, it's just incredible. It really is just an amazing piece. And why don't we just go into, let's just jump right in. Okay. So first things first is this was not a plein air piece, meaning like the Impressionists, he did not sit in front of it and then create it. He had to do multiple sketches, drawings, paintings, go back several different times of day with different types of subjects that he was painting. But there is something that he is doing in this piece that is really interesting. And that is something that the Impressionist painters would do all the time, is this varying of light. Okay, so in the foreground, where typically we have a lot of light in our artwork for, you know, a lot of reasons, because the foreground tends to be a place that we put our most dominant subjects. And of course, he does have that, the couple with the umbrella and the lady with the dress, right? There are, I would say they are our dominant subjects, and they do kind of fall upon that rule of thirds vertical line, but they're in shadow. And he is doing something that the Impressionist artist did, where he is varying the shadows from the highlights as you go back into the distance. So what I mean by that is, like, you can see there are, like, the trees are creating these shadows that kind of jump all the way back, creating these horizontal lines. And the Impressionists would do that. It creates a really nice division of space. But he has his foreground figures, his dominant subjects, in shadow. And not only that, but he's doing it in a way where we can still see the form, we can still see the color, and he was creating it with pointillism. It's just totally mind-boggling to even, like, if you're a new artist trying to comprehend this, there's no way to even, like, how he did this was just totally nuts. Movement. There is a lack of movement, and then there is a lot of movement in this piece. I say lack of movement because look at the way his subjects are positioned. They're very still. And he did say that he wanted his pieces to almost have like this sculptural feel to them, like almost like you're sitting and looking at a sculpture park, right? But then he has all this movement in the water. He has this dog and jumping around and moving, and like a monkey. Like, there's so many things here. We have the rowers in the water that are rowing their boats. There's sailboats. There's just like, it's a very interesting juxtaposition of themes, of light, of texture, style, form, right? And because when we're talking about, like, we talk about contrapposto, right? He breaks that for sure. Like, these definitely feel like sculptural figures. But not everywhere either. Like, he does have very relaxed figures as well. It's hard to define, right? Because they look relaxed and very stiff at the same time, all of these people. So, I don't know if it was the last piece, but we were talking about artwork that people either did like or didn't like, or was ahead of its time. This was that piece. This piece came out in 1891. Huh. It even says it on the description. Scandal, hilarity were among the epithets used to describe what is now considered George Seurat's greatest work and one of the most remarkable paintings of the 19th century. It was first exhibited in Paris, and he labored extensively over this painting. I mean, gosh, like what it's like to stand in front of this piece is really bizarre. You know what? It's in that movie, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. They reference this piece where they're standing in front of it, right? And his friend, oh gosh, what is the friend's name? He's like having this mental breakdown throughout the entire thing. He's standing in front of this and just like going into the pixelation of all of the things and how chaotic it almost like it seems, you know, getting lost in the picture. It's very something, it's something that I think as humans we can relate to, right? When you, it's hard, sometimes hard in life when you're going through a difficult time to see the big picture because you're lost in the details. But yeah, so George Seurat labored intensively over this. And at the time he was like working during the same time as some of the greatest Impressionist artists of the world who would make everything look just so flowy and elegant, and it had a very different type of movement than this, where a lot of people thought his work was ridiculous, that he was almost like trying to copy Impressionists but didn't have the style of Impressionists. And I'm trying to see here. So yeah, one of the things that was really interesting about this piece too was how he created light. All right, so Impressionists were known for capturing light in their brush strokes and their long, loose brush strokes. And his was very like so perfect and so like planned and calculated and constructed that everyone was like, wow, what a joke. This guy, like, he went too far, right? And everyone just thought he missed the point of Impressionism when he wasn't trying to create Impressionist work. Although he had similar themes in Impressionism, like the luminosity he created in his work. Like, for instance, the light that he captured really looks like realistic light shining through the trees onto the ground, as opposed to like the people that are in the ground that is in shadow. That's a very hard thing to do, like trying to create these separations of things that are in highlight and things that are in shadow, and how would you make it look like they belong in the same place. Okay, as far as composition goes too, that's really interesting is the people and the subjects in his pieces are sculptural, but they are blocked out. Because he has these sections of light and dark, there really is like the dark section of his characters and then the light section of his characters, right? And they kind of create this silhouette. And as we know from our silhouette class, I showed a lot of his sketches that he was very into silhouettes and would use that as almost a sculptural way to give information to the viewer without having to give too much information. Although in this piece, he still did give that information, because if you look up close at it, he somehow created form and depth and everything by using very small dots. Another thing to consider is, we talked about frame. I think this is a really interesting use of frame. So you can't see it here, but I would highly recommend looking at the piece on the website when you're done watching this video, or even now, whatever. He created a frame around the entire painting, but he painted it. He painted the frame. And how he did it was opposites on the color wheel. So for instance, on the ground where it's like green, like really green, he painted in the frame red. And he would try to jump between the opposites of the color wheel by creating this frame all the way around. So in a way, what he also did was play with the optical illusion of putting everything in this frame. We talked about how important frames are, that humans tend to want to look at what's inside of a frame prior to looking at anything else. And in a way, he's forcing the viewer to look at this frame because he like designed the frame not only to be complementary of the colors of the piece that he's working in, but he put the frame in the piece as well. So another thing too to consider is that even though these subjects that he has in here are very defined all the way back, the shape of them are the shape of the subjects are very defined. He does play with how the color saturation and value is played. Like for instance, the contrast goes down, okay? So what I mean by contrast is very high contrast would be like black and white. As his characters recede into the background, the contrast of the colors start to blend more into the gray area, which makes them appear more muted, even though the shape of them is still sort of defined pretty harshly. Like very blocky. Like he intended, you know, he wanted them to feel sculptural, and they definitely do, including the trees. You're not getting a lot of branches in his trees. We're getting the main sculptural branches that he has displayed, and then the rest is, it's very stylized. And I think one thing that is really interesting here too, and I think one of the reasons why people laughed at it so much, but I think it's just like, wow, incredible. If you look at the original piece and how he created the leaves of the trees, it feels kind of like static. Like this really beautiful static where nothing is defined. It's like almost the feeling of leaves with like a really, I don't know, like I know static is like black and white, but imagine static like where you're getting this feeling of pixelation far before his time of computers or anything, right? Like he is basically creating pixels like we have on our tablets, our screens, or whatever. And it's just so far beyond the times that no wonder so many people hated this piece. And I think that at the time too, it was one of the, like it says here, you know, it was a scandal that people were like, this is ridiculous. Like it doesn't make sense. The style of this is disgusting. Like this is not real artwork. And then there were the other people that were like, do you realize what a breakthrough this is for our time? And good artwork or revolutionary artwork really does push the boundaries. And it doesn't always have to be in the message of the piece. It could be the way the piece is created. And I think that we have a hard time with this as humans. So for instance, you know, when films were first introduced, everyone had a hard time with it. It was just like the value of it didn't seem like, what is the value of making moving pictures? People were scared of it. Like when they showed the train coming into the station, was it the Milius brothers? It was a train on the screen pulling in, and the people that saw that video or that movie for the first time jumped away from the screen. They thought they were going to get hit by the train. They had no idea what was going on. And then, you know, like as we progress with cinematography, I was at a weird time in film school where the digital film like world was coming into play, and my professors, God bless them, because I learned so much by learning both mediums, but we're having a really hard time with the adjustment of the digital format becoming the dominant movie making format for filmmaking. Same with, you know, photographers. When digital film, it's like you learn this art, you learn how to do it, and then when that is broken with something that is so instant. Yeah, there is like something that is very sad about that, right? Like there is the death of this art form and process, And sometimes the process of art making can be just as fun and beautiful than the actual final piece that you've created. And I think that is kind of what keeps a lot of us artists going, is the process, is we'll enjoy the process. And once you find a way to enjoy the process, then it becomes addicting. My process very much includes enjoyment of books. I am always listening to audiobooks when I am painting, and that has become part of my process. It gives me time to really explore new stories. So anytime I look at my art pieces, I know what book I was listening to, what story was, whatever. A tangent that, let me get back onto the right thing. But anyhow, we're in an age at this moment in time where we kind of have VR as being the scary format, I would say. It's something entirely new. And I mean virtual reality. And that could be like, we're hearing a lot about the metaverse. We're hearing a lot about wearing these things to go into these new worlds. And that can be very scary and intimidating because of a lot of reasons. One is we are feeling like maybe we're becoming less attached to the real world. And what would that mean for the future generation? Like, are they going to are they even going to be involved in this world, right? And then there's a lot of people that are excited about it. I'm somewhere in between. I'm very excited about the idea of it, although anything can be abused as much as it can be benefited from. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because I think that art and art forms and the making of new ideas and the making of new arts are all hand in hand. And this is a very specific example of, he calls himself a scientist, right? He's making this piece because he's interested in the science of light, image, color, luminosity, composition, form, like all these things that when we think of artists, we think of them being like, oh, But art and science is a hand-in-hand experience. You really need to know how the world works in order to understand how it looks. Why does the light look this way at a certain time of day? Why does it cast shadows? Why do these colors make us react in a certain way? Art really is a science, and the more you learn, the better communicator you are to your viewer and the messages that you want to convey to your audience. So Seurat was somebody who got a lot of criticism for his work, even though he was far ahead of his time. And I think, like when it comes down to creating your compositions and your paintings, to always like keep these artists in the back of your mind when you're creating. I think it can be very difficult when composing images to think too much about your viewer and say, oh, would people like this? And I think that can be a very dangerous line to cross. I know that when we're new artists, we think this way a lot. Like we'll go to an art show. We have an incredible art show in LA, the LA Art Show. And it's this big warehouse filled with not only the biggest artists of our time at this moment, but they also show art from throughout history. Walking through that is as inspiring as it is intimidating, because you can go 1 foot and see another best artwork out there. And all of them are just spectacular, or some of them you might even go like, how did this get in there? And that is a really interesting about art too, is like when you talk about the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, it's so true. And the beauty in art is not only what is on the canvas, but it's the meaning of the art as well, or it's about the artist itself. A lot of artists throughout history became famous for their art because they sold it. They sold their ideas. They sold it. Um, they sold the concept, the story, and they made people believe in something, and it revolutionized that period of time. So never underestimate the power of the artists as well. I know that when we think of artists, we always think of the big, bold people, but those are the ones that are just, you know, that are doing a good job of being really great salespeople and advocates of their own work. But then we see someone like Seurat. Like, I'm always shocked by how many people are not aware of his work, because I think it's just like such a great example of like revolutionary ideas back in the 1800s, you know? And we know a lot about Van Gogh, you know? And but we don't know very much about George Seurat as a community. It seems like in the United States. It might be different around the world, but yeah, anyhow, I think it's really, really important to not only study the pieces that we're talking about in this course, but I think it's also important to, when this course is over, to continue your studies and maybe find 5 pieces that you are drawn to, even if you're not really sure the reason why you like them. For me, that was the Bewitched Mill one. I wasn't sure what it was about that piece that was just like, this one. I like it. I don't know why, but I need to study it. So I would encourage you to do more studies. Maybe this becomes a weekly habit for you, something where you can put on an audiobook and learn about artists by deconstructing their work and trying to recreate it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about his composition, because I talked a little bit about like the division of light and the lines going across, but we haven't really broken it down fully. So for sure it is definitely a golden triangle composition. We have this line that is cutting through the middle. And then we have these parts that are coming down and that are going up, that is creating, it's dynamic but structural. But it's also the rule of thirds. You have the top lines, the top third, the middle third, and the bottom third are very different, even though they don't lay on those lines like exactly, but it is being divided into thirds, including being divided into thirds vertically as well. We do have a left side, a right side, and a middle. The trees are very structural. Instead of them all being individual trees, they appear to be all connected together. And the highlights and the shadows create very distinct shapes as well. Dynamic diagonal lines, almost triangular in how the shapes come together. You have almost a big triangle like this, as well as the one kind of coming down. The shape of the shadow, the blocky shadow in the bottom, is like a rounded diagonal line as well. It's just very dynamic and structural. Like that, I think that's what we were talking about. Is this piece really was like hard to define, and when we can't define something, we tend to criticize it. We have that. That is like probably one of the biggest problems with mankind, is when we don't know something or enough about it, or it's hard to define, we don't want anything to do with it. Not everyone, but we typically have arguments because of that reason. In those cases, I think it's when I mean, it seems very obvious to me, but I don't think it's obvious to everyone. In moments where you can't define something, should be very exciting. Because then it's just like a testament to the evolution of not only like us as humans, but the evolution of advancing ideas, the evolution of our world. And I think change is scary, you know? So when things do evolve or we see a new idea, I think we tend to want to um, work against it or want to argue about it because we're afraid of losing the things that are very near and dear to us. And that happens when things change, right? But we can't stop change. So how do we, you know, how do we embrace change? Gosh, isn't that the question? That's like the life question. How do we embrace change? Well, in my personal opinion, sometimes it's easier to embrace it than it is other times. Really, you know, sometimes you are like, yes, I need to get out of the situation, or it's harder. And what makes it easier, I think, is nothing. I don't think change will ever be easy, but I think communication and support and really relying on the love of humans and the understanding of others is what's most important to get through the change and the challenges, especially the hard changes. But when it comes to changes in ideas, like artwork, where we're kind of forcing a new idea in style, maybe new advancing technology or whatever, weigh its benefits. What do I like about this? Why don't I like this part about it? So at this point in time, I'm using a a round brush, and you can tell it's very wet. And I'm trying to pull some of that moisture out with a dry paintbrush at this moment in time and reworking the shape. All right, so we're at the point in time right now where everything just really needs to be tightened up. And that's really how it goes with all compositions. You block everything in, and then you get it to a point where you're like, okay, I can't go any further. I've added in the most of the information that I need. Now it's time to just add in the final details and just start really working through every part of your piece. Almost like reading a book. If that is easy for you, you can either go from top to bottom, left to right, or depending on where you live, if you read from right to left, you can do it that way as well. But really just start going through the whole thing and just start focusing on areas that need some work. And how I like to figure out if an area needs work or not in my work, in my paintings, is to kind of think about it this way. Is there anything, number one, is there anything distracting? Is there anything here that doesn't feel right? And if so, what do I do to remove that? Or what can I do to blend that in, fade it out, or to balance it? A lot of times you may not have to do anything then to balance it, right? It feels off balance in a bad way. And really, that's one of the biggest problems in composition is that the balance, whether it's asymmetrical or symmetrical, the balance feels wrong. It feels like the scale is actually tipping over and about to fall over, not that the scale is heavier or lighter or like balanced, like the scale is falling off the table. How do I fix that? Put the scale back on the table, maybe put less weight on one side or the other. Like, metaphorically speaking, obviously, we're talking about a painting, but a lot of times when you need to fix your composition, it really is the balance. And next would be like think about the overall shape of it. Are the shapes working with each other in a good way? And if they aren't working in a good way, was that intentional? Did I do that on purpose? So it would evoke a certain emotion within the feelings, my audience's feelings. Next, you can think about if it's not working, how are your colors working together? Does it feel like there's no cohesive color scheme? Does it feel messy, muddy? And a way to prevent that would be just limiting the amount of color that you use in your piece, focusing more on value. And value is how light and dark a color is. So how you can correct your value is just adding white, black, or gray. Then after that, what I would do is if I'm figuring out what my piece is, if my piece is not feeling right, think about the main elements or the subjects in your piece. What is it about them that is working and that is not working? Are all of your subjects, or all of your people in your piece, are they all dominant looking? Are they all fighting for attention? And if that's the case, it might be a little distracting, maybe. It really does come down to a balance. And here we are at the final, like looking at it. It's not identical, but they're close, right? And ultimately, what I hope you gained from this class is not only learning about composition, but I hope you also thought a lot about you as the artist, your message, your intent, like what you want to convey in your work, and or what you want to study. I don't think that every artist needs to say something. Sometimes we create art just to create. It can be a form of therapy, you know? So maybe define what your own intentions are for art making. If you're someone that really does want to make art that speaks to an audience, I would focus a lot on really getting to know the principles of composition that we talked about. And if you're somebody that has like the story that you want to tell, I would highly recommend going through some of your favorite movies and pressing pause on them in your favorite scenes and seeing what that composition looks like in that storytelling. What colors are they using to evoke a certain emotion in that scene? What are they wearing? What are their facial expressions, body language, all those kinds of things? And because filmmaking is such a beautiful way, like not only the story you're telling, which is like the writing part of it, but painting with movie pictures is just, like, in my opinion, just so amazing. And then the way the music works with it, like it's just I mean I love the form of art because, you know, obviously it's something that is equally part of me, just as painting is. But if you're somebody that just likes to paint, and you're like, yeah, but every time I paint, like, I don't know what I'm doing. You need to come up with a process. And a lot of people don't know what I mean by process. A process would be like anything that helps you to get to painting. That could be like, all right, got to put the kids to bed, and you know, then I'll have time to paint. But then you're like, but where am I going to paint? Find a space. I don't have paint. Get paint. I get bored listening to music. Listen to an audiobook, or vice versa. Maybe you're someone who doesn't like to sit for too long. Stand. You can stand in front of your canvas. You can stand you can sit. I like to sit, and lately I've been liking to sit and paint because I'm up all day, you know, with my 2-year-old. There are solutions to every problem, and I feel like there are solutions to every life problem in artwork as well, because it is such a therapeutic thing that when you are creating, it really gives your body a chance to work while your brain is processing. And I think the two go hand in hand when it comes to therapy. And I know that a lot of therapy is about internalizing, you know? And that works for a lot of people. But for me, like, I've always been somebody that when I'm learning or when I'm discovering things about myself, my hand is moving. And I think we need to kind of incorporate that more into more therapy, is the movement, because a lot of people need to move in order to process. And I know for me that I work through my problems by creating, and my best paintings usually are when I'm sitting in front of a piece of paper, a canvas, even making movies, whatever it may be. For other people, it might be singing, dancing, making music, whatever. And for other people, it might be playing sports, you know, like hand-eye coordination. It really is up to you, and we're all artists in our own way. And yeah, if you're still here, I truly appreciate you spending this time with me and letting me talk to you. And I really enjoy making these classes for you, and hopefully you're getting something out of it. And again, thank you for your time, and I will see you later. Bye.